Welcome to the latest episode of Gryphon Hall. Now, in the last episode, I actually started adding the manufacturing and processing functionality to the workshop levels of the hall. I added stamping and mixing rigs, as well as the more traditional style crafting stations that don't really belong in the other planned modules. Now, that includes a blast furnace, anvil, various mod-related stations, and more. So my ability to produce has taken a very big jump forward thanks to this effort. And in this episode, we're going to set up some very important processing stations. Since I now have the ability to make sheets of various metals, I can make iron sheets, which are necessary to build encased fans, and those will in turn give me the ability to smelt and wash. And the key bit about the smelting is that after this is all done, I will no longer need to crank out a steady stream of charcoal to support smelting operations. And that's worth the price of admission all by itself. For this episode, I will initially concentrate on prototyping the washing station, as goofing around with water is infinitely less dangerous or painful than goofing around with liquid hot magma. And functionally, they work exactly the same, they just produce different results. So once I have a working washing prototype up and running, all I would need to do is replace the water with the lava, and it'll work for smelting too. And with that in mind, I have two major requirements. The first requirement is that the rig has the ability to manually wash or smelt 9 stacks at the same time. Now, by manually, I mean that I will deposit the material to be processed on depots so that when the stacks are processed, they will remain where they are until they're retrieved by me. However, I also need the ability to do some semi-automated processing. Now, in this case, I think I need the ability to drop off material to be processed, probably in a container of some kind. And after that, the process is fully automated, with the queued material getting processed and then transferred automatically into my storage and logistics network. The second part will be trickier, and I have some untested ideas, but I'm 100% confident that it can be done. The question is really one of how sophisticated or messy the finished product will be. The reason I need both manual and automated processing is that there are times when I'm working on something right now, and so I need the stacks to be processed right now. Now, in that case, I'm willing to take a moment to wait for them to finish, and then I can grab them and go back to whatever I needed them for in the first place. However, there are times when I have a bunch of material to process, but no immediate need for the finished product, and I don't want to hang around and babysit the processing, so in those cases, I want to drop off the material and let the system handle the rest. And that includes putting it away properly in the storage system and maybe even making me a sandwich if it's not too much trouble. I will start with setting up the bit for manual washing and smelting. Now, it's pretty straightforward, and I've built these before in my previous experimentations with the Create mod. 9 is a good number for manual processing because by the time I place 9 stacks of whatever I want to process on their respective depots, the first stack I place is done processing, and I can then go back and pick them all up in order or swap them out to continue the cycle. And this means that the dead time spent waiting for them to finish is minimized. The automated side is going to be trickier. My original thought was to have 2 fans blowing, and then a single chest would feed dual funnels, each of which would serve only one depot, where the material would be processed, and then I would have 2 filtered funnels set up to take away only the processed material and deposit it into storage. However, even before I got to actually trying to prototype that, I had way too many questions and concerns running through my head. Now, I had once seen a simpler and arguably more elegant solution where a bank of fans were set to run in series, and then material was paraded in front of those fans via a very slow-moving conveyor belt, which gave the fans enough time to do their job, and then the finished material dropped off the conveyor at the end to be used or stored however the builder wished. Now that it comes right down to it, I think that second design is the more practical of the two, and so I think I'm going to adopt that one here. The problem with that approach is that I'll need to slow down the conveyors considerably in order to give the fans enough time to complete their processing, and to change the rotation speed of the equipment, I will either need to use a rotation speed controller, which is pricey and I don't quite have the infrastructure to make one of those, or to use alternating large and small cogs, which are cheap but use up a lot of space. So for now, cheap and easy is the preferred option, so I'm sticking with the cogs, especially as I will have an opportunity to mostly cover this up with the housing like I did with the mixers and stampers. With the basic mechanics laid out, it's time to flesh out the casing. Now, the equipment in this module has a larger footprint than the mixers and stampers, so I will need to come up with a housing design and then see if I can slim it down a bit, especially at the sides, so that I will still have room to move around the module once this thing is up and running. Now, if at all possible, I want to try and make the housing look attractive and interesting. Now, that's a tall order considering what I had to work with here. Now, Minecraft is, by design, incredibly boxy, and large flat surfaces are an easy trap to fall into if I'm not careful. I personally like to break up that natural flatness with blocks of different thicknesses and shapes, as well as colors and patterns. To me, it's not enough to have something that works. If at all possible, it must also look good, or at least interesting, and above all, it must look like it belongs wherever it is. Now, there's always exceptions to every rule, but exceptions are just that, exceptional. They are few and far between, and that's how and why they stand out and grab our attention. But this is not one of those times. With the design in mind, I need to expand the storage network so that I can tie into it from the various workstations where applicable. This includes secondary controllers under each of these pillars and trim blocks between all of them. The next step is to start building the rig itself, and I'll do that once I get back into the game world. Mother puss bucket. After over 15 hours of trying different strategies and solutions to recover the game file, including a considerable amount of time with a saved game editor, I had to call it. He's dead, Jim. And that's not even the embarrassing part. No. The embarrassing part is that I, a technology professional since 1987, with a bachelor's degree in software engineering, with stacks of recommendations and commendations on the thoroughness and quality of my work, I got lazy and quit making regular backups of the game several episodes ago. I mean, come on, man. Even interns learn to save and back up their stuff in the first week, and I, the guy who learned the lesson the hard way over 40 years ago on my Commodore Plus 4 with its little audio tape drive for storage, forgot. So that leaves me with three options, though one of those is to just call it quits and walk away, and I'm not quite ready to do that, so I guess I really only have two options. The first option is to jump into my virtual DeLorean and do a Marty McFly back to episode 5 and then work my way forward from there. The other option is to say a little prayer for my lost little world and take all that I've learned through this effort and do a Steve Austin and rebuild it. I have the technology. It'll be better than it was before. Better, larger, less laggy. And that last choice is the option I'll pursue. So while this may be episode 12 of Gryphon Hall, the last of the series, you can also consider episode 0 of Gryphon Manor, a reboot of the series. Okay, with all that said, what does it all mean? I'm pretty sure you're curious about the details. The basic premise will remain the same. I will build a large central base that is mostly underground, and then I'll flesh out and upgrade the world surrounding it, and all of it in survival mode. I still love the idea of a steampunk world, and I never quite got to the point where I was able to build my trains with the Create mod, so that itch is still very much unscratched. And while all of that remains pretty much the same, I'm revisiting the mod list. I want to refine the steampunk vibe a bit, and so I'm loosely basing this mod pack on the 1860s to 1880s. Beastcraft machines and Valkyrian skies are out. However, immersive aircraft is in. And though aircraft in that era is a bit of a mismatch, so are zombies wandering around and trees that don't fall when you cut through the trunk. So I think we could fudge the specifics a little bit. The small ships mod will remain, but my land transport will be a bit more traditional with the inclusion of the Asticore carts. And if we're going to be all steampunky, I'm adding Mr. Crayfish's gun mod. If I'm going to go swashbuckling in my airship, of course I want a good blade hanging from one hip and a good pistol holstered on the other one. I'm also trying to decide whether I should amplify the fantasy element. Now, a bit over a year ago, I watched the Arcane series on Netflix, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the vibe they captured in the League of Legends universe with a mix of archaic technology and high magic, and I really want to go and do something like that by adding Ars Nouveau and maybe some other related mods. On the other hand, playing with mods is very much a gamble, and each mod you add to the pile is like buying one or more lottery tickets to a lottery you don't want to win. While I really want the whole enchilada, I might have to stick to the dollar menu. Still, I am also thinking of amping up the world generation a bit with the inclusion of the region's unexplored mod. Now, I've played around with this a bit in the past, and it really adds some outstanding new biomes, including some real treats in the nether. So those are some more crash and burn lottery tickets, but I think it might be worth it. Another question I'm wrestling with is to decide whether to include the Twilight Forest dimension. Now, I really like the idea of what they've done there, and I've always been eager to give it a go. But going back to my remark about winning a lottery I don't want to win, introducing a new dimension to the mix is like buying a minecart filled to the rim with crash and burn lottery tickets. So based on all of that, the next question is probably when will all of this happen? And I truly don't know. Now, I've been itching to do some work on the Deep Dive mod series, and this seems like a very logical time to do exactly that, and possibly exploring some potential mods to add to the mix at the same time. So I might spend some time doing deep dives while I play around to find a good and compatible mix of mods, and possibly a good starting seed for Gryphon Manor. I will also work on a new, or at least modified, design for the base, but at least some of that work will depend on the seed I intend to use. But the possibilities are endless. Finally, there's a question as to whether to go with or without shaders. Now, to me, it's really a non-issue, right? Go with the shaders or go home. But with that said, I might switch out my trusty BSL shaders for something else. That will take some time to figure out, and probably a lot of experimentation too. Now, since it might be a while, please feel free to share your ideas and opinions with me as well. This project is as much of a learning experience for me as it is for my stress relief and artistic expression. It also lets me be pedantic and compulsive in a safe environment away from the watchful eye of my judging wife. So I won't be saying goodbye. Instead, I will stick with my usual, and I hope this finds you and yours in good health, good spirits, and perhaps a touch of good fortune. And until next time, cheers.